And so we come to the true list that is neither positive nor negative, although I usually get pretty negative the closer we get to number 1. Today we are talking about the top 10 best Yu-Gi-Oh cards of 2017. Why is there no top 10 worst Yu-Gi-Oh cards of 2017? Because let's be real here, most cards in this game are crap. Now, to define this list, we are doing things from January 1st to December 31st, which means the card had to be released in the TCG during those dates. Things in the OCG I do not count because that is a different meta with a different mindset. Also, in my opinion, these cards had to be format defining, meaning things like Firewall Dragon, Spellbook of Knowledge, and the Wind Witch Engine, and many others. Ultimately, I don't feel really changed things that much. They are very powerful cards, but I don't think they really created a top tier deck or necessarily changed anything. They were just powerful cards that came out. So this list is basically based around the history of the past year of Yu-Gi-Oh! Also, I tried to limit it to 1 card per deck, so that way we can talk about as many different format-defining decks as possible, and that wasn't that easy. A lot of decks were given a lot of strong support this year, and also, there was a lot more exciting stuff that came out this year than we remember. 2017 will forever go down as the year of 2 Tier 0 formats, but there actually was a lot of fun stuff, and I hope I can really shed some light on some things that maybe we don't remember this year because of a general negative taste. But without further ado, let's get started. So by far the hardest one to pick for this list was what would be the representation of Magician Pendulums. Though this deck is not as super strong or became as strong as I wish, and even now I'm still very skeptical of the deck has had a very good impact on the TCG and is very balanced. On top of that, all the cards in it are super good, but I have to give it to Time Pendulum Graph. This trap has amazing disruption ability, as well as a lot of comboing ability. So many of the Magician cards go off when they're destroyed, and due to the loss of Sky Iris, just as the meta has shifted from allowing for rank 7s, we really found ourselves needing a way to blow stuff up, and Time Pendulum Graph does this. This is a card that when used right has no negative. You can combo off it with the Magician's effects plus Star Pendulum Graph. It's an amazing card and the staple of the entire deck. I feel sorry for Invoked. I never felt like they got to be truly as revered as they should, but Invocation is completely insane. The ability to fuse with your opponent's monster, as well as simply needing Alistair, who is multitude searchable in the deck, really leads to some crazy degenerate plays. In reality, some may say Alistair belongs in this spot as the Invoke deck technically revolves around him, but keep in mind, Alistair is a simple searcher and hand trap. The searchable card could be for anything that they wanted to assign to Invoked, but they intentionally gave Invoked one of the most powerful fusion cards that can summon 6 of the more relevant fusions we've gotten over the years. To me, makes Invocation truly the most insane card of the deck. Plus it recycles the Alistair, which to me is bullshit. So, for number 8, I want to give the shout out to the True Kings and Denglong and everything that really allowed for Dinos to be a thing, but for the true spot, I gotta give it to this motherfucker. This thing is insane. Insanely easy to summon, like with Time Pendulum Graph, it combos off with your other dinosaurs, and the disruption of this thing, plus being able to inflict so much damage just for using its own broken effect. Ultimate Conductor Tyranno is an insane card. It allowed Dinos to rise to relevance, and though the deck kind of lost a little steam, more because it just lost its extra stuff than its main stuff, Dinos is still a good budget option, and if you're looking for just a powerhouse boss monster, this is the guy. There were a lot of good staple monsters added to the metagame this year, but if I had to pick one that stands out the most, it's Tornado Dragon. Spell and trap removal has become a tricky thing to figure out how to deal with in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Some people say banishment with Cosmic Cyclone is better, some people say quantity destruction is good with Twin Twister, and a lot of people are just afraid to run back row removal just because what if you're not playing against a back row deck? Well, that is where Tornado Dragon comes in. A generic extra deck monster that anyone can find room for, that is easy to summon at just 2 level 4s, and can take out 2 cards. The fact that it can be used on both players' turn essentially makes it an MST on legs, as well as good play disruption considering the direction the meta went this year. The card is extremely good and is usable by everyone. That makes it a great card in my book. Number 7, we get arguably the most relevant anime card of the year, Trickstar Reincarnation. Trickstars is a fun little fairy deck that implements elements of burn. It implements link spam, the ability to put in a lot of Xyz. It really is a fun, versatile deck, but ultimately the most famous and powerful thing about this thing is being able to use this card to destroy your opponent's hand in tangent with Droll and Lockbird. But even if you just have this card, it's still amazing. Being able to completely take away your opponent's strategy by just making them lose a whole hand, especially after you let them set up, is a really great way to just completely put the game in your favor. The Trickstar monsters are not individually super powerful, and the deck can be played around, but the added bonuses that this card adds, plus combined with Lycoris, as well as being able to special summon a Trickstar from the grave, makes it a staple of any Trickstar deck, and the sheer fact of the reason we are now also, actually it's not, but it is a good reason to side things like Lancia and Solemn Scolding. I hate Dragonic Diagram. This basically represents True Draco's masterpiece was considered for the list, but ultimately Dragonic Diagram's flexibility and additive for other decks, as well as allow decks to have a True King and True Draco engine. That's right, an engine based around big beaters, people. I have to give it to Dragonic Diagram. It's not a strict once per turn, so you can activate multiples per turn. You can trigger stuff with the True Draco engine, as well as other things that blow up in the hand. Oh, and get this, apparently, if you target a quick play spell card in your hand, you can still activate it. This card is a pain in the ass. I hate it. It's completely degenerate. Why is it not at 1? Some of you may think it's crazy that I put Spiral Double Helix at number 4, but the other spots I think do go to better cards. Spiral is pretty insane, I think would be the simple way to put it. I don't like the deck. I hate it less than the next card on the list, but ultimately Double Helix is just this insanely powerful card, and I wrote it off at first. I wasn't crazy about it. I don't like Spirals design-wise. But ultimately this card really does just create a deck. Like, there were a lot of good Spiral cards before this card, but Double Helix was the linchpin they all needed to come together and really create this insane deck. This is why if you Reaper a Double Helix, the game is basically over. They need this thing. It's so insanely powerful, and god does it piss me off that the Link era was started off by this deck. 2017 will forever be the year of the Zodiac. This thing is 3 because you'll see in a couple minutes, but essentially Zodiac was the most powerful deck in 2017. The ultimate evolution of the Xyz mechanic. Honestly, the whole deck could be here. I give it to Barrage though, because Barrage kind of pisses me off for the same reason Diagram does. It allows for Zeus to be splashed in anything, it can be synergized with other things, and the other annoying thing I hate about it is that it can pop itself, which essentially means that you are always ensured access to your Rat Pier, or if you need it, your Thoroughblade, or anything. It means that basically the deck has no way to not go off. And I give it to Barrage because, again, it just, all the adding, all the searching, plus if you don't even need to blow it up for its effect, you can turn it into an overlay unit, even more powerful to your Tridents and your Bras, but what the fuck? This deck really was insanely degenerate. It wasn't even the fact that the Zodiac monsters themselves were all that powerful. They're not that hard to out, but the fact that the deck was reliant on one card Xyzes meant there was so much extra room for traps. There was so much extra room for spell techs. So essentially you had this deck that was obnoxious because a Dryden is not that hard to deal with, but with all that extra back row, you really couldn't get around it. Barrage is the main card that I blame, but ultimately, this deck is garbage. Never bring it back. Here's the real reason we've forever changed the way we side deck in this game. Evenly Matched is bonkers. I actually like this card a lot, considering it punishes overly large boards, which dealing with overly large boards is a problem in this game nowadays, and I do feel the card actually is balanced. The sacrificing of your battle phase can be a very big deal for a lot of OTK decks, and on top of that, like I said, it's changed the way we play. Now you have to be careful when committing to a board turn 1. Now we're siding things like Lancia, Solemn Scolding. We have forever changed the way we deal with things in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh, and it's all thanks to Evenly Matched. I really do think the card is better than a lot of people think it is, as far as like what it does for the game. I'm sure it's going to get limited at some point, as all board wipes do, but the level of insane level of the power of this card, I can't even put it into words. It's so insanely good. Number 1 is Ash Blossom. Does this shock anyone? I prioritize splashability and usage for everyone over simply just it made one deck powerful. Ash Blossom is a card everyone needs to play 3 of. I try to avoid saying expensive shit is needed, but this thing is needed. This card is so incredibly powerful, and considering the game has really turned into search this, special summon this from deck, send this to the grave for basically making it another hand. Yu-Gi-Oh has become very get out of the deck reliant, and we needed this thing. This thing showed up at just the right time, and just the power of it, the way it stops plays, the way it can shut an opponent down, with really only just being a very simple stop one when played correctly. It is insane. There's a reason this card has never been below, what, it was like 50 for a week right after Nats when no one was doing anything. The level of power of this card is insane. It will forever be a 3 of staple. It's put above things like Ghost Ogre, simply just due to the fact that stopping something, being able to shut down that key important play, is just, it's needed in the game, and it's an interesting sign of where the game could be going, and 2018 looks like it could be a very interesting year. Depending on what we get in our May set, our Nats format could literally just be Synchro Spam versus Pendulum Spam. But I'm really curious to see where the game is going to go in 2018. And don't worry, the next list will be my top 10 favorite cards of the year. But tell me what you think. Do you agree with this list? Do you think other cards belong to your better? Do you agree with the placings? And as always, click to like, click to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.